Where I grew up, people didn't need to know the real name of the road. If someone said Night Crying Pass, everybody knew the place. It was one of those local stories people brought up with a half smile but never lightly. Supposedly, years ago, a family car caught fire on that road. Parents got out, but their baby didn't. Since then, people said that if you passed through there late at night, you could hear a baby crying somewhere in the dark. That alone would be enough to keep the story going, but what gave it teeth was the rest of it. People said if you heard the crying, something would happen on the drive back. Usually the story ended with a crash. Sometimes there was another detail, one that got passed around a little more quietly. They said that some people came back with marks on them, small ones, like something had bitten them. That night, around 11, I went up there with two friends, Tatsuya and Shun. Tatsuya had been drinking, so had I. Shun hadn't. That's why he was driving. Most of the ride up was just Tatsuya whining that the road didn't look creepy enough, that he expected some ruined mountain path, not a local route that is still actually in use. Shun said it was exactly why the place had lasted as a legend. People still drove through it, and that gave the story room to keep breathing. At some point I told them the version that I'd heard, a family car, the fire, the crying after midnight, trouble on the way home. Tatsuya brushed it off and told Shun not to wreck the car on the way back. Shun, sounding like he'd rather have been asleep already, just said, "Ghost stories are what's left over after people forget the real part." And then I asked him what he meant by that, and he said, if there was an accident on that road, some people blamed the ghost, and then the next one got blamed on it too, and after a while the original story disappeared, and all that was left was the tail end. And that was about as much as he had to say. He clearly wasn't as into it as me and Tatsuya were. Then we got there. Shun pulled over at the roadside and we got out. The nearest street light was far enough away that it didn't help much. The little bit of light that reached us only made the place look worse. Trees crowded on both sides of the road, and the wind moving through them made this dry, restless sound. Far below, hidden in the dark, the sea kept lapping against the rocks. Even Tatsuya quieted down at that point. Shun got out a flashlight from the car and swept it across the roadside. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't like something jumped out at us like a jump scare, but I understood standing there why people kept talking about the place. It had this atmosphere to it. Something that would encourage stories. And while I was already thinking we should leave, Tatsuya said, "Wait." Something in his voice made me turn. I heard it. A second later, I heard it too. For a moment it almost sounded like an animal. But only for a moment. After that there was no mistaking it. It was thin and unsteady, but distinctly human. A baby was crying. Tatsuya stopped where he was. Shun turned the flashlight towards the far side of the road, where a narrow side of lane broke off, just wide enough for a car. "It's coming from there," he said. Then he started walking. I thought that this was a terrible idea, but he had the keys and the flashlight, so Tatsuya and we had no choice but to follow. At the end of the lane there was a small clearing. The grass had grown wild. Old vehicles sat around the edges, half sunk into the place. Some were rusted out. Some looked newer. One of them, the first one Shun lit up, had been blackened inside and out. The windows were gone. Then he lowered the torch's beam. There was a child seat on the ground beside it. That detail is still etched in my mind. Everything around it looked dead and spoiled, but that child seat almost looked untouched. And the crying was coming from it, even though it was empty. Tatsuya muttered something. I didn't answer. I was too busy staring, trying to put pieces together. Shun walked over to it, ignoring us both, and reached into the grass behind the seat. And for a second, I was sure something was about to happen to him. But instead, he pulled out a machine. a CD radio cassette player, and he hit a button, and the crying cut off immediately. He looked back at us and said it was a prank. He noticed that the sound was looping. That should have been the end of it, and for a moment it almost was. The tension was broken. Tatsuya started laughing at himself, calling himself an idiot for getting worked up over a tape recorder. And then he kicked the child seat over. And a second later, he stood it back up again, dropped himself into it, and told us to take a picture. A grown man sitting in a child seat beside a burned-out car in the middle of the night. It was ridiculous enough that I laughed. Even Shun cracked a smile. Then Tatsuya started doing a mocking impersonation of a baby crying, flailing around to make himself look even more stupid. At first that's what it was, just absolutely stupid. Then all of a sudden it wasn't. I can't tell you the exact moment it changed. I only know that it stopped when Tatsuya stopped fooling around almost. It was like the noises he was making thinned out. It started catching in his throat. He had tears running down his face, and it didn't look like he was joking anymore. His arms and legs were moving in jerks now, not that exaggerated toddler-style way from before. And the sound coming out of him didn't belong to a grown man. It really did sound like a child in pain. So I called his name, but nothing. I moved towards him, and right then Shun came in from the side and kicked both him and the child seat over. "Grab him, we're leaving!" Tatsuya hit the ground unconscious. Shun and I hauled him up and ran back to the car. I kept asking Shun what had happened, and he told me to shut up, not to ask. We shoved Tatsuya in the back seat and Shun started the engine. And that's when both of us remembered the story. If you heard crying, something always happened on the way back. Shun's hand paused on the brake, only for a second. Then he said, "That's the tail end talking," and started driving. I've never seen anyone drive more carefully. He was sweating, but he kept that car steady the whole way down. Every bend, every turn, every small correction, all of it absolutely deliberate, like he refused to give the story anything to work with. He was the safest driver in the world that night. Tatsuya came round on the way back. He was sore confused and he didn't really remember what had happened. When he asked why his side hurt, we didn't tell him that Shun had kicked him. And before long, even we started telling it differently. We had said that the ghost of the baby had bitten him. That was the version that stayed. Later, through somebody who knew somebody, the three of us ended up at a shrine in another town and had done a purification ritual. The priest, or maybe just one of the people working there, said that we were probably fine and we shouldn't go near that pass again. Maybe that helped. Maybe there was never anything attached to us in the first place, though. Years had passed. Years have passed since then, and none of us has had the kind of accident that the story warns about. But I still hear things. Every now and then, somebody younger goes up there with a girlfriend or a couple of friends, or just because they've heard rumors and want to test them. And sometimes they come back saying the same thing. No crash, nothing wrong with the car, just a mark. A bite-shaped mark on the ribs, on the side, or a little above their waist, like something small latched on and didn't let go. It's not enough to prove anything, is it? But it's enough to keep the story going. And that's the part of Night Crying Past that I still can't shake. Maybe Shun was right, and the whole thing is just what people keep adding after the fact. But if that's true, I still don't know what happened to Tatsuya and that child seat. And I don't know why people still come back marked when they visit.